I hope you find love in the remnants of me that remains, in the fraction of my heart that still beats, in the optimistic parts of my mind that still heals. I hope you find peace within my forgiveness and healing within my commitment to you, to forgive. I pray you help me forget, even though your actions rattle around my brain like a moth to a flame, continuing to remind me of what I have to lose or gain. I hope what you're saying is not a gate to drain whatever left of me you have to gain. Please allow your words to soothe my pain. Let your actions complete my gaps, and words fulfill my sentences. Let your intent embody new growth and create wholeness through better paths. Allow your actions to be our strength, creating an undeniable bond of commitment and unity. I hope you find peace in the remnants of me that become one, combined together by the loyalty that we recreate. I hope I can trust you to be you, and what you become is great. I forgive you. Hey Brainiacs, I'm Cam's Brain, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of My Humble Opinion, where we challenge the viewpoints and opinions on all things considered, while ultimately deciding to agree or disagree. Or on this episode, I wanted to change the scenery. As you guys can see, I decided to come outside. We're going to be talking about forgiveness and if it's okay to forgive and forget. I myself personally have a very, very strong opinion on this. Some people say forgive and forget. Some people say forgive but never forget. And I think that's important as it relates to mental health as well as how you move forward in life. So when I air this episode, I really want everybody to like, comment, and subscribe and leave your own opinion on this situation. I think this is a big thing as it relates to people, the world, America, things that go on in your life. So before I start, I want to talk about the 4 R's. The 4 R's are the 4 R's of forgiveness. So the first R is going to be responsibility. You have to accept what's happened and show yourself compassion. Um, the responsibility aspect is really big. Sometimes we can be irresponsible, or sometimes we can make it somebody else's fault as to why we won't forgive someone. So responsibility is a big key thing. So it's really good that that is one of the 4s as it relates to forgiveness. You have to be able to show yourself compassion and others compassion when you get into a situation where you're trying to move on and move forward. So the second R is remorse. So you should use your guilt and remorse as a gateway for positive behavior and change. So the third R is restoration. You have to make amends with whoever you're forgiving, even if it's yourself. This is something that I struggle with because for me, I started life very young. I've said this before. I'll probably continue to say this as we continue these podcasts. I started very young, and one thing that I taught myself and that I noticed was a lot of times as an individual, if I made a situation my fault, there was no one else to blame. So I put a lot of what was going on with me. Um, I took a lot of responsibility for what was going on with me. But with doing that, it makes it harder for me to forgive myself. I find myself in a position where I'm even harder on myself because I feel like I should have seen something coming. Maybe I shouldn't have trusted this person. Maybe the roles or the situation would have been different if I chose a different, way of doing something. And that is a big deal for me. And I feel like that's a big deal for a lot of people. I think if you're a conscious person and you take responsibility in your actions, sometimes you're going to find it hard to be able to um, let things go just because You know you can be a better person, you know you can do better, but it's very important to let that go. It's very important to forgive yourself, move on and move forward and figure out how not to just make the same mistake twice. So the fourth R is renewal. Learn from experience and grow as a person. So like I said earlier, not making the same mistake twice. I think all these four things are very great and they coincide with one another. And I think it's important to lay those guidelines down before I begin the podcast and we continue to have a conversation. If anybody is going through the situation where they're trying to figure out how to forgive, I think it's important that we consider those four R's as it relates to moving forward. So there's three different types of forgiveness. I'm going to put those on the screen here because I'm not going to botch the correct terminology or way that you pronounce it. The one that I know how to pronounce and that resonates with me the most is release. After you forgive, you do have to release. But again, we're going to talk about if we should forgive and forget, and if forgiving and forgetting is the same as releasing. I think it can be. I think it all depends on your viewpoint on what you consider that, how you consider that to look. So I also think mental health is a big deal as it relates to forgiving people too. If you have good mental health, if you're able to kind of walk through a situation yourself and be able to be healthy while doing it, that's very important. And I think it's important to also pinpoint if you are struggling with mental health. Um, there are five things as it relates to that. So there are five signs of mental health: feeling anxious or worried, being very stressed from time to time, feeling depressed or unhappy, emotional outburst, sleep problems, weight or appetite change, quiet or withdrawn, substance abuse, feeling guilty or worthlessness. So, um, these are some things that you may experience when you have a mental health issue. And again, like I said, I think it's important to coincide the two, the mental health aspect along with the forgiveness. I think if you're in a situation where you're trying to forgive somebody, you got to make sure you got it all together, right? You can't, forgive and then put yourself in a position where it's going to be hard for you to let something go. So, as it relates to doing something positively, I think the best course of action is to make sure, hey, before you have a conversation with somebody, maybe make sure that you're good. Maybe make sure. I know for me personally, kind of how I handle mental health when I'm in a healthy position is to pray. Like I'll pray. Sometimes I will fast. I do a lot of fasting. Sometimes I'll write out exactly what it is I want to say to that person before I have that conversation with them. So I think it's a few things that you can kind of do to position yourself or ready yourself to forgive. That way, sometimes you can go and try to forgive somebody and then they'll have a brash response to what you're saying. They may not be in the same headspace that you may be in, or they may have mental health issues and not be able to understand what it is you're doing. I find a lot of times, you as an individual may be ready to do something that the person you are trying to do it for is not ready to accept. And that's a big thing too. And it's also a big thing to be aware of those signs as it relates to the person that you're going to be approaching. If it's not yourself as an individual, I know a lot of times moving forward starts with yourself and then with others. But you could be in a position where you've worked on yourself and then now you want to move on to the others part and ask for forgiveness or have a relationship or have a conversation, and that person may not be ready. And it could be that they're not exhibiting the characteristics that they need to accept what it is that you have to say. So for me, I think it's good to remember the nature of what somebody does in order to determine whether or not you should move forward with them. um I personally feel like you can forgive, or I can forgive, but I'm not forgetting. That's just me as an individual. I've, went through a lot of things in my life where it has made me that way. Like I said, I've started my life very, very young. So for me, I'll probably say this for years, maybe as long as I have this podcast running. For me, I had to learn from experience and being a young adult and having to handle things without the proper influence or direction. I learned that it's easier to say less. If you say less, the less somebody knows about you, the less they can use against you. And whenever somebody does something to you um, that you let in, it's easier to kind of, at least for me, push them out. Right. So, like for me, it's like this. I love hard. Right. I'm loyal. If I trust you, if you're family, I'm gonna give you the shirt off my back. I'm gonna do whatever it is you need, just because I feel like essentially that's what I will want done for me. I'm sure everybody has been in a situation where they've heard the saying, treat others how you want to be treated. I take that to the max. Um, no BS. So for me, the minute somebody moves different or does something that I don't agree with, I'm a very intense individual. It irks me. So I have to push myself away and never put myself in that position again. Now, it doesn't mean I can't love that person. It doesn't mean that I won't ever approach that person, but it does mean that I will never trust them with that particular thing ever again. And I will be extremely cautious as it relates to dealing with that person because of the experiences that we've had in the past. Um, the funny part about it is there's two things that come to mind when I talk about that situation. Um, one thing was when I had first met my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time. We were in high school, and you know, s- as things happened in high school, there was rumors going on about her and about me and just tons of stuff, right? And she had a friend that started a rumor about her, and I was really upset about it. I felt like what her friend did was wrong, and if her friend was loyal, she shouldn't have done what she did. And I looked at my wife. I said, "Look," I said, "why are you gonna still deal with her?" Because she had confronted her about the situation, and they remained friends. And I said, "Hey," I said, "why are you still dealing with her?" I said, she's talked about you. She said this, she said that. And she looked at me in the eyes and she said, "Look, here's the thing. I don't have to stop dealing with someone just because of one situation. I don't have to stop dealing with someone because they've done one thing that I don't like. It just shows me what I can trust that someone with." And that stuck with me for the rest of my life because what she said set me up for the future. Not only did it help me in my future with how I dealt with people, how I dealt with business, it also allowed me to have a deep respect for the way her mind worked. Even looking at it, even looking back at it right now, with us being so young, I think we were 15 and 16 at the time, with her to have that type of viewpoint on life and on dealing with somebody, it shows her maturity. It shows her intensity and her awareness of life and you know how she moved. And like I said, that one instant stuck with me in my life. It allowed me to it allowed me to realize that you're gonna have to deal with people. You're going to have to deal with people that are gonna hurt your feelings. You're going to have to deal with people that are going to upset you. That you're going to have to forgive. And moving forward, after you do that, is what is the most important thing. Moving forward after that, whether it be in a business decision, whether it be in a personal decision, is what's important. Um, and how you handle that person based on what they've shown you. I think Maya Angelou has a quote: when somebody showed you who they are, believe them. So it doesn't mean you don't have to deal with them, but it definitely does mean that you need to be aware. There's bugs everywhere. So after having that situation happen with my wife, um, moving forward, maybe a year or two, maybe even a little bit longer after that, I was working for a gentleman, or with a gentleman rather, named TD. and he um he made a statement. We at the time we were runners. So what we used to do, we would go to this warehouse in Atlanta, pick up a whole bunch of car parts and deliver them to like rural areas in Tennessee and stuff like that. So we would shoot, man. I would get up at like, actually, I would stay up, but you worked from like 12 o'clock in the morning until like 6 o'clock in the morning. So it was just a lot of time to talk. One night, it was a pretty rough night, and me and him have both kind of had words with each other because it's a graveyard shift. If you don't get enough rest before you get in the truck, you may be a little groggy. But I say all that to say, one night we were kind of at odds, and I told him that he did something, and it had to be like dropping off a package at the wrong spot or something like that. And he said, "No, man, I didn't do that." And I said, "Yeah, you did." And at the time, he's older, 40, and I was 18 maybe. So I was that young kid that knew everything. And, I was kind of maybe, pissing him off a little bit more than he wanted to be pissed off. And we're going back and forth about the package and who dropped it off and who did the wrong thing. And he looked at me and he said, "I don't got to remember the situation." And I looked at him. I said, "What you mean you don't have to remember the situation?" He said, "I know who I am as he said, "I know who I am as an individual." I said, "What the fuck is that supposed to mean?" He goes, "I'm a man." I said, "What is that supposed to mean? Just because you're a man don't mean you can't drop off a package at the wrong spot." And he goes, "Look, it's like this. As a man, you know whether or not you did something, not because you remember a situation, because you know who you are. You know the content of your character. You know what you would and what you wouldn't do. And if you care enough about yourself and about how people view you, you know you wouldn't make a mistake the way that I was saying he did." And he said, you wouldn't say certain things. It's like if you know what you would and wouldn't say to a woman, you know what you would and wouldn't say to your mom or your father or to an elder. And he looked at me square in the eyes and he said that. And I kind of had the same situation that I had when I was talking to my wife. And I'm just like, okay, that was pretty intense. I get it. Okay, I understand. So I left it alone. I still think he dropped that damn package off at the wrong spot. But the end of the day, he had a very compelling point. So from that point, I said, okay, well, look, for myself, just like what I learned earlier in life, I said, okay, well, if I take what he's saying, it has a very valid point. I have to figure out who I am. I have to figure out how I'm going to handle a situation, how I'm going to approach a situation, and um how I'm going to survive. I had to figure out a way of surviving as a man. I had to figure out a way of surviving as a person, as a human being. So going back to forgiving, I decided at that point, if I forgave somebody, I was not going to forget what they had done. And it's because of a lot of things. Some things could be petty. Some things can just be realistic. But at the end of the day, I decided at that point, okay, as a man, if somebody does something to me, it's very important for me to remember what they did, not to hold it over their head, not to continue to remind them of it, but to remind myself what to be cautious with, even if I deal with somebody else that has the same characteristics. I've found in life that a lot of people, while there's, billions of people in this world, um, a lot of personalities and characteristic traits are the same amongst different people. So for me, I can't forget what somebody's done because that may happen to me again with somebody else. And then I may be able to pinpoint it and go, no, I've had this experience. I know to leave this person alone, or I know what's coming here. So I know not to even indulge or put myself in this position. So that's why I choose to not forget. I don't want to forget the lesson that I learned um, is the bigger thing for me. I don't want to forget how it made me feel. If it made me feel bad, I want to make sure I never feel bad again. If it made me feel good, I want to make sure that I know why it made me feel good. There's some things that people do that are bad, that hurt, but at the same time also make you feel good too. Cause like, sometimes you can be happy a situation happened because one, you get to let go of somebody that's, annoying you, or you get to learn a very valuable lesson that's very inexpensive. A long time ago, I was working at, or sorry, a long time ago, I was living at this apartment complex. And at the time, I was doing carpentry and stuff like that. And the super that worked in the apartment complex was doing a lot of like um, repair work, construction work, and stuff like that. And at one point, he kind of befriended me. He realized that I had tools and stuff like that. So one day he knocks on my door, and he's like, "Hey man, can I borrow an extension cord?" And he always knocked on the door and asked for things. And for the most part, I got him back. It wasn't a big issue, so I never thought anything of it. But this particular time, he asked for the extension cord, and man, I didn't see that extension cord for forever, right? And I couldn't let it go. I couldn't forgive the situation. I just was, I was extremely upset about it. Cause like for me, I'm thinking, look, man, we help each other out. I'm giving you something, I'm in the same business. I'm allowing you to borrow something of mine that can be conducive to me making money. And now you're holding up my money by not giving me my stuff back. And I couldn't let it go. I couldn't let it go. And then I was sitting down. I can't remember who I was talking to at the time. I want to say it was maybe a neighbor or something like that. And I'm like, yo, this dude still got my extension cord. He didn't drop off my extension cord. That's messed up. And dude goes, how much you pay for the extension cord? And I was like, I think I may have paid like $30 or $40. But shoot, back then, $30 or $40, that was a lot of money. Especially, you know, 10, 15 years ago. To me, $30 or $40, that was a matter of being able to get diapers. Shoot, I had 3 kids at the time. So or actually no, I think yeah, about three. It was either 2 or 3 kids at the time. So it was a big deal to me. But the dude goes, look, man, you just paid $30 to get a headache out of your life. He goes, you just paid $30 to realize that somebody's character and to know to never deal with them again. I think you got off pretty easy. So, like I said, some things that happen when you're younger, some things that may seem minuscule, some experiences that may seem minuscule to you in the moment can really help you if you are able to remember what happened in the future. So I've had tons of people um, like that will ask me for something. I know I ain't gonna get it back. I know you're not gonna give it back to me. So I developed a situation where it was like, okay, if you ask me for something and I give it to you, I have to be able to afford to lose it. Even if you're telling me you're going to pay me back, that's how I kind of function, where it's like, okay, now that I have learned this lesson and I've forgiven this person, I've went through the anger, I went through the pain, I've been able to realize, okay, look, um, it's not worth my time. I'll go get another extension cord and I'll let it go. I'll just leave him alone and he better not ask me for nothing else. That was one portion of it. But me not forgetting it allowed me to realize in my adulthood when I got older, um, if somebody's asking me for something, I'm not going to give it to you unless I can afford to lose it. Now, one person may go, I'm not going to give it to you, period, because when I was, you know, 18 years old, this happened to me and I burnt. So no, right? You have some people that will do that. To me, that's an unhealthy way of forgiving but not forgetting. For me, I'm just like, okay, you know what? This happened to me before. I lent somebody something before, money, product, whatever, before, and I didn't get it back. So for me, it's not, no, I'm not going to ever do it again. But it's like, okay, I'm not going to put myself in that position again where I'm expecting something. So even if that person says, "Oh, bro, I'm gonna get it back to you in a day. I'm gonna get it back to you in a week. I'm gonna get it back to you tomorrow." If I give it to you, I'm not expecting it back. Now, wisdom, I'm not gonna say that to you because you as an individual, you have still made a commitment. So I wanna be able to see if you're gonna show me who you are and do the right thing or the wrong thing, right? So that's my version of being able to forgive but not forget. It doesn't always have to be a negative connotation behind it. It can just be, hey, I've learned this lesson. So now when I move this way, just like how my wife was saying, I know how to handle this person. So if you ask me for, $20 and say you're going to give it back to me tomorrow, and I don't get it back for a month, that doesn't mean I'm going to cut you off, but you damn sure better not ask me for $20 again. And if I do decide to give you the $20, I want 30 because I know it's going to take you longer than you saying to give me my money back. You know what I'm saying? Now, if you give me if I give you the $20 and you say you're going to pay it back to me next week and you get it back to me the next day, you've showed me who you are. So I'm the type of person where I'm going to go, bruh, keep that money. I appreciate you even making sure you gave it back to me, let alone early. So that's kind of how I function. That's kind of how I do things. Like I said, I'm the type of person where I can wear my heart on my sleeve. I can be very approachable and I can be very loyal, but at the same time, I take things to the max, both positively and I wouldn't say negatively, but as it regards to, not putting myself out there ever again if I experience something that I'm not comfortable with. Going back to forgiving and forgetting. If you are the type of person where you can forget, that's great. I know a ton of people that can really do that. They can, forgive you for something and then leave it alone. I've been on the receiving end, or I've been on the other end where I've asked somebody for something and then I haven't given it back, and I continue to try to like tell myself, okay, I'm gonna do what I was supposed to do this week, or I'm gonna do what I'm supposed to do next week. And at the end of the day, I've experienced it from both ends of the spectrum. So if I deal with somebody, and they say no, personally, I can understand why they say no. And I can understand why they may say, hey, no, I'm not going to handle it where I'm going to give it to you, but not expect it back. I'm just not going to give it to you at all. Cause I know that feeling. But I also handle things the way I handled things because again, like I said, I've not only have I been the person that has borrowed and not gotten it back, or that has given and not gotten it back. I've been the person that has borrowed and not given it back in more than one way. It's not always financially. So, and I think, or I hope, or maybe not, but maybe so, most people have been in that position where they've asked somebody for something and not giving back what they said they're going to give. Um, Outside of finances, you could be in a relationship and ask for certain things, and somebody, gives you their all, and then you're not able to fully reciprocate what that person is doing for you. I think if you look at life in a lot of situations you find yourself in, I think you'll always realize that there's something that you could have did a little bit better in, as it relates to helping somebody out or showing somebody your gratitude in a better, more conducive way. So I say, really consider that when somebody is coming to you and they need something, or when you find yourself in a position where you should forgive somebody or you want to forgive somebody, put yourself in their position. Kind of try to see what they may be going through or what they were going through at that time, how they may feel, or how you felt if you were ever in that position. And if you haven't been in that position, don't be an asshole and go, "Oh, I've never been in the position where I haven't given anything back to anybody." It's like have a little bit of a heart, kind of try to understand, and again, really dig a little bit deeper. If you telling me that you've lived your whole life and you've always been on an up and up about giving back what somebody has given to you, whether it be spiritually, mentally, physically, or financially, that may be bullshit. So really consider that and think about if there's something that you have done that you can relate to if it happens to you. I think forgiveness, um, letting go and forgiving people, I think a big part of that, again, is about your mental health, their mental health, your acceptance and understanding of a lot of things, and your remorse towards things, and figuring out how you can turn what happened into a positive. Sometimes people do things continuously, right? I think it says something when you have the fortitude to forgive someone and then they continue to exhibit the same characteristics, right? So there's also another part to forgiveness, at least for me. Like I said before, I can forgive and I cannot forget, but in my mind, I think the way I'm not forgetting is a positive way because it doesn't mean I'm not going to deal with you. Now, there are some instances when, for me, I will forgive you, I won't forget, and I'll leave you alone. And usually it's when you continue to practice the same characteristics after you've been forgiven. I can't be around somebody that asks me to forgive them or and then they continue to do the same thing. And I can't ask for forgiveness myself and then continue to do the same things. I think it's a two-way, situation where it's like I can't ask for you to forgive me and then I do the same thing over again. If I've asked you for something or I borrowed something from you or I've asked you for your help and I haven't been able to reciprocate, I acknowledge that and then ask you to forgive me. Moving forward, I'm not going to ever ask you again, or if I do ask you, I'm gonna undersell and over deliver to surprise you and let you see that I've become a different person. My uncle used to have a saying, after somebody does something to him, he trusts you to do exactly what it is you gonna do. And that's as much as he gonna trust you. So for me, it's the same thing where if you give me another opportunity, I'm going to undersell and I'm going to over deliver, but I expect the same thing. I can't forgive somebody, and I don't think you should forgive somebody, and then they continue to practice the same characteristics. That's when I will leave you alone. That's when I will put myself in a position where I will completely cut you off and, leave the whole thing alone. So I'm gonna leave you guys with that. Um, this has been my humble opinion. I'm Cam's Brain, and I want you guys to continue to tune in every Sunday at 8 p.m. on the YouTube channel Cam's Brain. Thank you. Have a good day. Peace. On the whole, I believe it's important to not allow certain things or people to rattle you or control you. In my humble opinion, not allowing yourself to let things go allows that something or someone to have power over you. I grew up very early in life and realized very quickly that people will utilize you for their own personal gain. That's friends and family. The hardest lessons learned are from the betrayal by the people you love and trust the most. There's a saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. The funny part is most of the time your enemies are people you would never consider to have that mindset with, because they're usually the people you trust and love the most. How do you make yourself aware of the toxicity of someone while simultaneously being genetically and traditionally wired to love and respect them? It's a tough pill to swallow and trait to develop. There's a lot of things I've never shared in life because it was my way of saying less about myself, so people would have less to use against me. I've developed a way of survival, as most people do, that creates an immediate rift with any long-term relationship because it takes years to get all of me. Life is set up in a way where it's easier to be a self-introvert regarding certain things to prevent future heartbreak or disappointments. My Uncle Tony used to have a saying, I'm going to trust you to do exactly what I know you're going to do. And unfortunately, until I'm able to continue to live this life and figure out different ways of processing things, that's where I would be at. If I love you and I respect you and you have my trust and you keep my trust, you'll always get all of me. If you put yourself in a position where you lose my trust, I have to be able to handle you the way I am familiar with you moving until you show me anything different. That's just my humble opinion. I want to thank each and every one of you guys for tuning in to this episode, and I'll see you again next Sunday at 8 p.m. While filming this outro, there was a young lady who just walked by and asked me what I was filming about. And I let her know that this episode is about forgiving and forgetting. And she had a very good point. Boundaries. Um, Boundaries is a very big thing as it relates to not forgetting. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be negative. It doesn't mean that you have to be mean. It just means that now that's your boundary. Your boundary is knowing what you're going to accept and what you're not going to accept. So I think, and I feel like the part of not forgetting is a big part of that boundary. And I think that also ties in with the mental aspect. I think it ties in with the 4 R's. I think it ties in with a lot of stuff because now you're creating infrastructure for how you feel. Yeah, you're creating a way of moving forward as it's going to relate to you in a positive way.